Soil School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by the Mosaic Company.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to the Soil School. Today I'm at the Stevanus Family Farm catching up with Aaron Stevanus. Now, Aaron's joined us on the Soil School in the past. He's worked as a seed agronomist, he's worked in the crop nutrition industry, and now he's back on the farm as a seed dealer, and he's looking at crop nutrition across his farm, matching hybrids with populations, and trying to determine what's the best crop nutrition recipe for his farm and different hybrids from no-till to conventional to optimize yield on his farm. Here's Aaron Stevanus. Hey Aaron, you're back on the farm. Tell me about what's going on today. You've got a lot of people here talking about a lot of information, learn a lot about crops.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're here to kind of try to put everything together. How do we make more profitability out of what we have in our soil and choosing the right hybrids on our farm? So that's kind of the biggest focus of the day.
Now, corn, hybrids here, crop nutrition, it all adds up to yield. From your perspective, how do they come together?
Absolutely. So to me, it starts first with the base layer, and that's knowing about your soil. So in general, here on our farm, we have a lot of variability. Our biggest, limiting factor is water. And that's why I think it's very important to have the proper map to make these, varies in the farm. We have a multi-hybrid variable rate corn planter, but what it all is based on is SWAT Map, which stands for soil, water, and topography.
Talk about knowing your hybrids here. I mean, we're also talking about fixed and flexed.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, we had Paul Sullivan here. He was talking about all these different times, and he made a great point saying, really, all hybrids flex. When it flexes, we're actually reducing the amount of kernels. So it'll always produce to its genetic potential, but we're constantly taking off of its potential yield. So it'll flex down, not up. So what is it doing? It's responding to its yield environment, and really understanding when these hybrids flex is important. So he's categorized it into 4 times. So it's essentially girth, rows around, looking at kernels around, L1, which is that length, so we're moving our length, and also L2, which is a little bit of length, but it's moving into that more reproductive phase when we're filling milk. And then finally, that kernel depth. So you could have 2 hybrids side by side at low pop, high pop, same number of kernels, but we're getting a flex in the kernel depth in that.
Tell me more about population. You've got an incredible display here beside you that looks at different populations, different soil types, obviously. What are you learning here?
Absolutely. So what we're learning is, you can see here we have different population and different yield environments on our little corn board here. And really, when you kind of look at it, it's pretty telling on where the low-hanging fruit is in a system like this to make more money. So what I have here is a variety, a brand new variety, and we have it at 38,000 on a sand. So what we're seeing is this is an L2 hybrid. So it did have a little bit of flex long, but now when we're getting that grain fill, we have a stress. It is on sand. We didn't have a lot of rain here in August. We're actually seeing those kernels start to abort, and obviously using that to fill these kernels down here. So we have a lot of tip back, and when I used the granular app here to essentially do a yield analysis of this, on this variety at 38,000 on sand, was 112 bushels per acre. So what happens then if we were, because really population is stress. We're stressing the plant out, and the reason why we're able to push populations higher is because as we've gotten new hybrids, they handle stress better, we're just gaining more yield, so then we can push populations higher. But in this case, on the sand, where we have a lot of stress, late season, when this hybrid is doing its flexing, we have it at 26,000 plants per acre, and you can see we're reducing the stress, so the tip back here is significantly less. So when we do the yield analysis on that, 150 bushels. So we have a 28 bushel yield spread between 38,000 and 26,000. And when you really drive that home, that's a lot of money to be had if we're matching, once again, our limiting factor, which here is water, and we're matching that to the yield environment, the hybrid population to the yield environment. So once again, tying it into that SWAT map. That SWAT map will say this is a low water holding area, soil, water, and topography. Water, the big factor. So this is where I would probably put this variety at 26,000. But then let's talk about that. It's not all sand. I've got good soil. 38,000 on good soil. Sure, it's tipped back a little bit compared to the 26, but now we have more cobs, more kernels in there. And when we do the analysis, it's 214 bushels per acre. So really driving home that profitability on the good soil, pushing pops where it can handle stress, and we're going to get a benefit of that. For those that don't have technology to be able to apply, we did it at 32,000 here, and we can see this is variability. We have full cobs all the way to the tip, and then we have some tip back. So there is more variability in this 1/1000th of an acre, but still that gives you a good perspective of, say, like, I'm just have one planting population. That's all I'm going to use. I have variable soil. 191 was the population the yield at 32,000. So once again, showing that, okay, stuff like this we can learn. If you're static for this type of hybrid, we probably want to be 32. If you have the ability to variable rate, make sure you're choosing that right script and knowing your limiting capacities and adjusting it accordingly, so we're essentially maximizing our genetic potential and choosing the right population for that zone.
Now, Aaron, you're doing a lot of work on populations, genetics, environment here. Let's talk about crop nutrition.
Yeah.
What's the focus for you in actually knowing how to feed those hybrids better?
Absolutely. So here's the fun thing. When we start talking populations, we're talking about cobs here, but there's stuff that happens below the ground as well. So Dr. Fred Below did some work on pushing populations and what that does to the hybrid, not only above the ground, but below the ground as well. So I dug two roots of the 38,000 and the 26,000. It matches exactly what he was talking about in his work, that as we push populations higher, we are going to have a significant root reduction. So what does that mean on a nutrition standpoint? Well, that means as we're planting earlier, we're pushing that to push yield. We need a phosphate and a zinc source right at the root zone to make sure we're maximizing our root development, especially in something like this. So really what I should have been doing, and a part of it was to show this, is I should have been having a variable rate script with my SWAT map to show where I'm pushing pops. I should be pushing up my phosphate rates as well to get a better root development, because I know I'm going to have less roots in general, which is going to help us in limited water capacity as well.
Now, you talked about efficient phosphorus. Why do we need efficient phosphorus, and how do we get it?
Absolutely. So having that phosphorus into the plant is critical, because really it can be in the soil. Think of it as 60% of our phosphate is taken up in application year. So we're not maximizing all of it. So how do we get more of it, more efficient use of that fertilizer in application year? Well, there's a couple things that you can do that. One is adding zinc. Zinc is always a good partner with phosphate, because essentially we lose a little bit of mycorrhiza the more we put phosphate on, and really zinc helps with the phosphate uptake because it's essentially moving phosphate into the plant and helping root growth at cooler, wet conditions. So also there's a part of pH. So we need pH to be lower to have better orthophosphate uptake, or better movement of the phosphate into the plant. And so if we can essentially, in our area we have a lot of high pHs, so if we can drop the pH at the root zone at the granular level, that's really important. So like a product like Micro Essentials that has two forms of sulfur and zinc all in one granule for uniform nutrient distribution is really going to help with phosphate uptake in general. And the reason for that is, A, we have the zinc, it's all together with the phosphate, so we're going to help that promote root growth in cool, wet conditions. But then also it's got two forms of sulfur. So what it does is that elemental sulfur needs to go through an oxidation stage. And what that is needed is water, temperature, and microbes in the soil. When it goes through the oxidation stage, we essentially, at the granular level, it'll never change your pH of your soil, but at the granular level, at that root zone level, we are changing the pH to be more acidic. That's what happens in the oxidation phase. So what we're doing is we're changing that acidity to move that phosphate into the plant more efficiently. And then that's going to help with our root growth, but also later into the season as we need more phosphorus into the plant.
Hey, why is uniform distribution of nutrients so important here?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you were to take that same analysis and put it into a blend, as you can see in this little demonstration we're going to do, you're going to have that's essentially phosphorus, two forms of sulfur, and zinc, all over the place. So if you think of your corn plant being 4 to 6 inches apart, you're going to have one taking up a lot of phosphate, one taking up one form of sulfur, the other one taking up elemental sulfur, another one taking zinc. So you're going to have deficiencies, sufficiencies, and toxicities in that blend. With microessentials and nutrient forming technology, you're able to take all of those nutrients, put it into one granule, so every single one of those plants in that 4 to 6 inch range is having a good day in crop nutrition and helping it take up more phosphate into the plant as it's developing roots and as it's growing later into the season.
Hey, final question for you, and that is across this farm, you've got no-till,
yep.
You've got conventional, acres. How important is it to sort of trial on both of those systems to make sure you're hitting the zone in each farming system?
Absolutely. So where we're standing here, while in general this is wheat, we had a big red clover crop, and this is conventional till, but right beside it I have no-tilled right into it. And it's important to do those things to see what you're doing. There's a lot of costs, especially as diesel fuel is going up, into tillage. So if we can limit that yield gap between tillage and no-till, then we can really help saving money, especially as commodity prices start to drop. So that was the trial here. We also have it in a multi-hybrid variable rate, and from what I've seen, the combine will tell the tale. That's the end factor, but I am pleasantly surprised there is no difference between conventional and no-till into red clover that I see, and we're just helping provide more nitrogen naturally from the plant, obviously helping being tied in with commercial fertilizer, but it just all adds to that yield bucket. Also, I noticed differences. We did have one where we had sweet corn, and we did have a difference in that the cover crop type. And we're definitely seeing more nitrogen available with that cover crop of red clover versus tillage radish and annual ryegrass. So once again, we're just learning what's the right tools, how do we use them, and really how do we maximize profitability and yield.
Aaron, great stuff. I really appreciate you making some time for Soil School on a busy day. Get back at it.
Thank you.